All right, today we're going to talk about sketchbook design. So we are going to make our own sketchbooks made out of materials that hopefully you have at home. You're going to have to be a scavenger and a little bit inventive here, but basically what you need is you need some sheets of paper. So it can be lined paper, it can be plain paper. I happen to have sheets of this like light gray paper from a paper airplane project that my boys and I did. And you're gonna need something for the cover. So I'm suggesting paper bags. I know they've been doing paper bags at the grocery store, so I have a bunch of those. What you can do with a paper bag is you can actually open it up and you can cut along the seam. So you can kind of cut along these seams here and open this bag up. So by cutting out just the bottom, I now have a big long sheet. So what I did, and there's many ways that you can do this, but this is what I'm going to suggest. I took one of my sheets of paper and I used it as a template on my paper bag. So I used it as a template. I don't know if you can see the edges. I'll try to put it slightly in. And I basically just traced. I'm going to trace in Sharpie just so you can see the lines, but I would suggest tracing in pencil. I just basically traced so I knew the size that I wanted, but you could certainly use a ruler if you have one. But if you don't have one, just trace the size paper that you have, and then you can cut this out as your cover. So then you can see my lines here, and so then I would just cut on this line. Okay, you get the idea? All right, so now I've got my paper already cut out. So this is gonna be my cover, so my front and back cover. So I'm basically just gonna fold this in half. This is like a smaller size sketchbook. So if you wanted to work bigger, you can. You can come up with a different design if you want. But then I have my papers for the inside. I'm gonna do the same thing. I'm gonna fold those. And then those are gonna go on the inside here. Now, I have one here that I made a little bit different, sort of similar, but a little bit different. I added in additional pieces of the brown paper as I was going. So if you want to do this, like where you add in more pieces of the brown instead of just your drawing paper, you can do that by cutting more pieces of the paper bag and then folding them in half and adding them on the inside. So I'll do that so you can see what that looks like. So I didn't want to waste the remaining parts of the bag, so I actually used all of the bag when I made my first sketchbook. So I just put like a couple sheets of whatever kind of paper you're going to use, and then I would put in a paper bag, and then I'd put a couple more sheets of regular paper. And then I put another paper bag, and then some more paper. So you decide what you want. So now we have to bind this in some way. So there's a couple ways that you can do this. Here's one that I have a little further along. I actually took a hole punch and I punched some holes. You can't punch, I couldn't, my hole punch didn't go through all the pages at once. So I kind of pulled these apart and punched like a few at a time and then lined it all back up. You can do that, so you can do hole punches. If you don't have a hole punch, you could, use a pencil and kind of poke holes in the paper. If you have a drill, you could ask for adult assistance in drilling through the pages, but you don't want to do that like on your regular table. You would need to ask someone at home to help you with that part of it if that's something you're interested in. But let's say you use a hole punch, okay, and then you've got to figure out something to kind of tie this off with. So you can use anything. You can use twist ties. You can use string. I happen to have a skein of this string. I don't have a needle right here where I'm working, but I do have some tape. So I'm going to take a little bit of a piece of tape, and you can make a needle by putting some tape on the end. And then I'm just going to feed this through. Now you can bind this a bunch of different ways. Now I'm not going to show you any fancy bindings. If you're super interested in that, you could look some up. But you could take these and just tie these off individually. Something like this. So I could have 3 separate pieces like that if I wanted. Like I could have like a little fringe on it, and then I would tie the second one and tie the third one. I could just put 2 holes in here, and I could just have a hole at the top and a hole at the bottom. You also can do something where you like feed this through. So on this one here, I kind of fed it through so it looked a little bit different, but that's up to you. Okay, so you got to figure out a way to bind it all together and have some papers on the inside. I can't wait to see what you do. So once you do this, you'll move on to the next video, which will show you what we're going to do on the cover.